Hey everybody, I'm Kevin,
And I'm Frank.
and we're going to take you behind the headstock tonight to talk to you about the SG Faded model and how it saved Gibson. We were at a point where we were hurting, and out of the blue, this model came out of nowhere and really turned things around. So this is the background, untold story of the SG Faded. So stick around.
Go behind the headstock with Kevin and Frank, two ex-Gibson employees talking about guitars and the guitar industry with an inside perspective.
All right, so Frank and I were going to talk to you tonight about the SG Faded and other Faded series of guitars that came out about 2001. Now, we want to put this into context because in 2001, we were at a point where we weren't doing so hot. We kind of hit a slump. And to put that into perspective, I was doing some research today, Frank, on some of our economic challenges in 2001.
Right.
So we were officially in a recession in March 2001, and it lasted pretty late into the year because of the dot-com bubble bursted. That was a significant contributing factor. I mean, if you remember, this is still kind of the birth of the internet. It had been around a few years, but it went ballistic. More internet subscribers were in homes. Everybody was going crazy with their internet businesses. Just about every commercial on the Super Bowl was some kind of .com business, right?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I
It went
remember
crazy.
boxers were like putting .com tattoos
Oh,
on their stuff. Remember?
Yep.
It was like a .com craze. Everything.
I mean,
So
it was
that was 2001, and that kind of
2001. The bubble burst, right? And
right.
Silicon
And it was
Valley took a
towards
big
the end of
hit.
the year, right? It was towards the end of the year. I remember when that all started.
Well,
At
this
least
says,
for us.
well, it probably started before we officially declared a recession. So March 2001, we officially declared a recession, which is what, like 3/4 of decline in a row or something like that.
Right.
And it lasted through November. Also, GDP growth slowed significantly, and business investments declined sharply. And as we know, in September of 2001 was 9/11, and
Right.
that really shook all the markets, consumer spending.
Oh
You
yeah.
know, it was really shaky times.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but earlier in the middle of that year, I remember we were hearing that we were going to have to do some layoffs, possible shutdowns.
Well, it was
Uh,
getting towards the end of the year, right? It was getting towards the end of the year, I remember, and we were all going away on Christmas break or New Year's break, right? It was going to be happening. And we were looking at like taking the whole month of January off, right?
mhm.
Of 2002, right?
Yep.
So after 9/11, everything kind of came to a halt and war broke out essentially. So um we were looking at, it was going slow and slow and slow, and normally you get a little Christmas push and whatnot, but not so much. At our price points, Gibson wasn't really in that game for Christmas. Christmas belonged to Epiphone, from what I remember.
Oh yeah, big
you
time.
know they do the player packs with amps and guitars and stuff, and that's a great gift for beginning musicians and whatnot. So we didn't really benefit that much from
Mm-mm.
that time of year.
Yeah, think about it.
So
Squire, Epiphone, right? For
yeah,
acoustics, Takamine always had lower end player packs, and
sure.
I don't know if PRS was doing their imports yet or not,
I don't think so. I
but they
think
were
they
definitely
started.
on our radar.
Yeah, well, for sure. But at that point, we were challenged, like we mentioned in other episodes, about the 30% growth coming up for next year. And, one of the biggest problems with the plant was lacquer. When we shot lacquer on everything, it takes 3 days to dry. And once you start getting into 400 and 500 guitars a day, where are you going to put, 1,500 guitars? And we were hanging them all off the roofs and had conveyors going all over the place, but you really can't touch them. It's not like you could take them and store them somewhere. The lacquer's wet and curing, and you can't touch it.
You got to stay on the line. Yeah.
Right. They can't move. So you can't really turn the line over in a sense. So having to grow 30%, it's, we're not just going to raise prices 30%.
And I'm sure the warehouse was bloated with inventory at that point too. And we'd go through those phases where our inventory would just get out of control.
Sure. And, so then it was kind of like, well, I think it was Chris Roberts who came up with the satin lacquer. We had tried. Now I don't know if that was before. Did we try the SL guitars, sans lacquer guitars? Was that before the satin or after the satin?
I think that was before, but it didn't really work.
Because our idea was to get a UV cured lacquer that you could touch right away. So we put UV booths in. We did all this research. We had engineers working on it, and it was in the primitive stages of UV cure for wood. Most of the people were using UV cure were using metal, shooting some kind of metal, so it was easier to manipulate. But we had a problem with wood. There was problems like the finish would get inside the pockets in the cavity, and the light wouldn't, and that stuff would never get hard. It would never cure if it didn't get touched by light. So we would have to hand wand it, and it really never, like you said, it never worked, right? No. It never buffed up really well like a normal lacquer guitar would, and it was always milky and cloudy. So we were still looking for something that we could turn around quick.
Well, the old joke was sans lacquer was actually lacquer.
Yeah, right. So it was actually lacquer.
But there was a successful run of satins before the Faded series.
Right.
It was the Gothics.
Okay.
Gothics came first, and they were satin. But what we ended up doing with the Faded series was a different satin. I think we learned.
Well, they were satin black.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've ever seen anything satin black. You can't touch it.
No.
I mean, if you wipe it on your desk, it got scuffed up or shined up, or
the fingerprints that would leave on it. So
not get it out of the plant without it just being, nasty. So the satin lacquer on the Gothic was great because we could, shoot them and touch them within minutes, an hour. You could put them on a rack and roll them over into the next department. So no 3 days waiting on the product. So
did you still have to buff the Gothics?
No, we didn't buff them. They were
that was a huge time saver too.
But we did fill it. We tried to make them nice and level, and you know what I mean. So it was hard. They didn't just flow out of the plant like the Faded series did.
Right.
But yeah, you're right. We did the satin lacquer there, and that was difficult to get those right. The Gothic series. But that showed us that the satin lacquer had promise. So the goal was, all right, let's come up with something a little more traditional. So Chris Roberts and I messed around a little bit with doing some finishes, and he came up with an idea where we could put the red stain on and then put the natural pore filler over the top of it. And what happened there was it looked like the old aniline dye, like the back of the real 59s, the old Les Pauls, where the red had faded away. That's where the Faded series came from, right? The red was kind of loud when we put the stain on, but then when we went over it with that brown filler and it went into the pores of the wood, the grain filled up, it really looked old. And it was easy. Now it was easy to get a look, and you could spray those, and they would come out nice and done. And you could touch them within 30 minutes and move on to the next rack, you know. So that was really when Chris came up with the worn brown and the worn cherry look. Those both really were phenomenal finishes, and the SG was a great vehicle for it anyway. You know,
Mm-hmm.
with the angles on the SG, it kind of looked kind of cool, and
the price point.
Oh yeah, well, not to mention they were super inexpensive, right? So,
but I remember seeing them for the first time, and I probably reacted like everybody else. You went, "Wow, that looks great!"
Yeah, it had a cool look to it. Yeah.
So from what I remember, then they took them over to the corporate office,
right,
and showed the big guy, and his reaction was basically, "Don't lay anybody off.
Yeah,
bring them all back."
We had told people they were going to be laid off at that point. You know, it's like, hey, we're going to be taking the month of January a couple weeks off or whatever. You know, we'll call you. You know, just we'll let you know as soon as we're going to get it back going, kind of thing. You know, we had already called and told people because they were off for Christmas shutdown already. I remember sitting there and calling everybody, all my employees. You know, because I was a supervisor at the time of quality control and probably finishing department at that point. With me and Chris was running color prep, the whitewood sanding department. And so, yeah, I remember them calling us, them making us call everybody, call them back.
Right.
And it was a call to make. Hey, you know, sorry, can you come back in Monday and start working 60 hours a week, you know? It was a good call to make, though, man, because we never wanted to lay anybody off, and those were our friends, and you know, as much as our employees or coworkers,
Totally.
you know, we were all friends. Gibson was a really big family, and I don't know if it is today or not, but yeah, you know, so it was a good call to make. We brought everybody back. It's like, hey, we're coming back. We got these guitars. We're going to be busting them out, and we sure did. What did he say? We wanted to make 1,000 of each color right away or something?
Well, it was the other cool thing was, and I have the document somewhere and I couldn't find it, Frank. But initially, so when we came out and put it on the price list, right? You had the worn cherry, worn brown, but then there was a special. If you buy 100 of them, you get an extra discount.
Really?
Do you remember that?
No.
Because I was in the sales department at the time. So, first off, just looking at it was great. The price was insane, right? I think it was $5.99 street price. You think about an American-made, solid mahogany, lacquer finish, Gibson humbuckers, electronics. It's an American-made Gibson, and it included a case for $5.99. Huh?
Ebony fingerboards on some, ebony or rosewood. They were nice. It was good quality.
And an extra discount if you bought 100.
Wow.
And a lot of people bought 100. In fact, I remember a couple dealers calling and saying, "Hey, I just want to buy those. Can I just be a dealer and buy those?"
Right. Yeah, because they moved. The public wanted them. It was a great street price. And, you know, the store made a little money. We made a little money. We got the people back working. You know, I don't know if we made that much money on them, but it did. It was kind of like a loss leader type thing.
It was a survival thing. I mean,
it allowed us to raise production in the plant, get more people working, and get more other stuff out too, as well. You know, it kind of bought us some time because it was easy to grow 30% by adding more satins.
Oh, yeah.
You know, as you can see down the line. We're
going to show that in a minute. But for a lot of people, too, not only was it a great first Gibson to have, a lot of people bought them as a second guitar to have on stage. It's a great backup.
Yeah. A great second guitar, you know. Yeah, it was great. It was a great.
It made a
sounding
lot of
guitar.
sense.
It was real, made in USA product. At that point, it was cheaper than a lot of used guitars. At that point, we were beating the price of a used SG Standard or SG 61.
Or a bolt-on Stratocaster.
Right. And you
So I remember specifically one dealer that I had in Pennsylvania called me. He said, my Fender rep was just in here. And he said, how the hell are they doing that? I can't do that. We can't do that. How's Gibson doing that? They were just amazed. Now, It didn't take them long to follow up with their Road Worn series, if you remember that.
Right, sure.
Or was it like the Highway series or Road Worn, something like that?
Road Worn Strats. I remember that.
Yep.
I remember that coming out.
So literally, we helped encourage the Road Worns that were satins, and then next thing you know, everybody's making satin versions of all kinds of instruments because, number one, the market reacted to it well. Number two, it was a huge money saver, right? And production time saver.
Sure.
Yep.
It definitely saved money and production time, and you could repair it, and yeah, they were flying out of the plant,
And you know what? They sounded great right off the line.
Yeah. I mean,
that lacquer was so thin, they sounded great.
Our neck fit process, we had a tight neck joint, and it was a good guitar, And just because we didn't, sand, put all the lacquer on and buff it and all that, really, that's the only difference, And some little aesthetic things, pickup covers or something like that,
Yep.
But who really cared, When it come down to it, it sounded and played great. So.
Yep. All right, let's look at. I'm going to share my. I made a PowerPoint again.
And you know how much Henry loved the PowerPoints.
Oh, he hated them.
That's what I meant.
You better get right to the point in those meetings, right?
Oh yeah.
If you had any kind of bullshit fanfare to shove, like, God, get out of here, get right to it.
No polishing of anything.
Nope. Get to it.
I wanted the meat and potatoes.
Yep.
That's it.
Don't bore us. Get to the chorus, right?
Piece of wood. Look, that's a really nice guitar.
Yep.
Oh, that's one of the first ones with the crescent moons, right? Yeah.
So, and that was another thing that Henry was really dialed in on, and I don't think much of us agreed with it, but he was a stickler about inlay and size of inlay, and even the sizes of Gibson logos on the headstocks. He went through phases where we had 3 different sizes of trapezoid inlay on guitars, and it was, I don't know, from a production and purchasing standpoint, it's kind of goofy, but So I'm sure at the one we presented to him was probably a dot neck, just like any regular SG Special. And he put his thumbprint on it and said, make the inlay a little less nice because I don't want to totally cannibalize the sales of the SG Special and gloss.
So weren't the Gothic fingerboards have crescent moons in them at the 12th fret or something?
I think you're right. They were ebony boards that had something at the 12th. Yeah, you might be right. It might have been the crescent moon.
A star and a crescent moon.
And it had Orville on the back.
Right.
Mr.
Right.
Gothic
those
himself.
Might have been leftover inlays from the Gothic series, and we just put them in. Just to the 12th fret, because we didn't have them small.
I love it. We had a bunch of them.
We had a bunch of the regular size ones, so we put them all to the 12th fret.
I love it. Are they all the same size?
Yeah, look at them. Of course they are.
We had a whole box of them back there in the parts cage.
Yeah.
I love it.
Hey, we did. It looks good, though. That's a beautiful little guitar, man.
Fantastic. For that price, we killed it.
Yeah. Right.
There's the back.
Yeah. Yep. So.
Yeah, they are all the same size.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Of course.
I think you're right there, Frank. All right, so then, hey, when you got a hit on your hands, write another one. So the Faded V.
Yeah, that looks good, and we put the yellow pick guard on there, a little Manila or whatever looking pick
That one
guard.
looks vanilla. I don't know if that's the lighting though, but man, those sounded great too.
No, I think they were, because look at the
Truss rod cover?
Yeah, it's the
Oops,
same
sorry.
yellow.
All right. Yep.
I think it's like a yellowish, plastics we got for the brown ones.
I gigged with those a couple of times. They sounded great.
These are great guitars.
Yep.
Great. Nothing wrong with them.
And then eventually, someone at some point, I'm sure we heard from so many people, it's still a lot more of these that had the dot inlay on them. So
Yeah.
And I'm sure we knew the whole time, okay, we have to start with the crescent ones. Eventually we'll go to the dots.
Yeah, right. I think it was actually called the SG Crescent model we had, right?
It might have been called the SG Crescent Faded or Faded Crescent. Yeah, I think you're right.
Crescent was in there somewhere. I remember that. So, yeah, but look at that guitar. I mean, I wish that was my first guitar.
Hell yeah.
My old Hagstrom.
I didn't look like that.
Nice. Yeah, that's a nice little guitar.
So then the V got the dot inlay.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
That came with a gig bag, not a case.
Right. Yeah.
That case.
By the time the dots came, we got to the gig bags on everything. Eventually.
Yeah, I don't think they came with Seymour. Somebody must have replaced those pickups. We definitely didn't do Seymours on that.
Yeah, no,
We did a lot of Seymours then, but definitely not on that. But yeah, you can see the yellow or natural pore filler really clear on that.
Right, over top of the
yep,
the red stain. Yep. But it looks great. Doesn't that look like an old 59 back?
It looks so cool, man. It looks like a worn pair of blue jeans. You know what I mean? It's just got that nice worn-in look. They felt great.
It worked. It was a good series. Oh, yeah, there we go.
And then we really went crazy.
Everything. We need another 30%, guys.
Yeah, we got to grow 30% in 2003.
Juniors.
Yep. So double cut juniors, and then we had single cut,
like studios.
Faded special. Here we actually put an ebony in here, which we'll see some more of those coming up. There's the V, and of course the worn cherry and the worn brown. We probably could have picked a nicer one for that photo, but that's a weird seam on that one. But
yeah, well, we didn't want. That's how they came.
That's true, man. We didn't want to. We didn't like to hide that kind of stuff either.
Doing that when we did the photos, we would always think like, don't make it too perfect. We got burned one year. I remember one time they put this flame top picture on the strings package, and it was like a 5A flame top. I mean, beautiful guitar. Man, do you know how many calls we got? I want one just like the one on the string package.
Yeah, we got burned with like the Classic Plus and the Classic Premium Plus, and if it didn't look like the picture, we got so beat up. Yeah,
that's hard to do, to degrade wood like that, man. You know.
Yep.
Because what looks good sometimes doesn't always look great. It's hard to grade it. But anyway, that's another episode. All right,
so we went ballistic with the fadeds.
The explosion. Or implosion, who knows?
So then for some reason, I don't know why we didn't do a black SG right out of the gate, but we did a black SG. And I'm going to show you something next that nobody outside of Gibson has really seen this document before, but we had to, for every new model we presented, we had to do a new product proposal. And it's something that existed before I became product manager, but it made a lot of sense, but you had to fill one out every time. And here is the new product proposal sheet for the SG Special Faded. Now, what's interesting is, we had to do the customer target. Who is this targeting? And, what do we know about the target customer? And, here's the product codes that we're submitting, right? So we already had the worn cherry and the worn brown, so we're just adding ebony here. Now, here's the thing. You needed that signature on this, or else it never got into the system. So
Right.
let's say
Couldn't
we
tell.
showed this to Henry one night, and the next and later that night we're out at dinner, and he says, "Yeah, man, that's all approved. Doesn't count.
Yeah, no. Yeah, the
Doesn't
guys
count."
putting in the product code said, no, not so
Nope.
much.
They were so scared to put something in without the proper signature. You wouldn't get it in. So um, I don't have the sign sheet of this. Is what we presented, but I just thought for people watching here, this is kind of every prototype we would show to him that we were serious about pursuing and getting onto the price list. We had to do our homework, right? We had to have the
Yeah.
specs of each guitar and what did they compare to out there in the market.
Yeah, my job was the bill of materials part. I'd have to figure out the cost of each item that we put and how much and what we did and work with the purchasing department and try to figure out exactly what it was going to cost in parts down to every washer. We weighed how much filler we put on it. We figured
Yep.
out how much we did everything.
Labor and overhead.
Yeah, well, at Gibson, that was kind of like a finite number.
That was a standardized number that we averaged across all
Right.
models.
It was-
Yeah.
Right, because the electric was the same for every model. We didn't calculate, well, this one has, only 6.2 hours and this one has 5.7. So it was
Yeah.
just a flat labor overhead fee that we would put on each product and then go with the parts, the bill of materials, plus the labor and the overhead. And there we'd have to, what the,
Well, then
the actual cost.
Then we had to make our forecast for what we thought we were going to sell in the year. So you had your cost of goods.
Right.
You had what you were going to sell them for. So you had your cost of goods, your total revenue, and your total units for the year, and you had to present all that and plead your case. And if you were presenting bullshit, he sniffed that out in a second.
Yeah, yeah.
So you had to know what you were talking about.
We would try to copy the same stuff in there, and we could never get stuff past him. We never tried that often.
No, you couldn't. He saw it coming a mile away.
He read every line and questioned everything, and he was really thorough in it. And if it was a good product and project, he went with it. He was cool. He would put his stamp on it, change this, change that. There'd be a few things. I'm sure he wrote on your product proposal sheet a few times.
I have a few. Yep.
Yeah, where he would okay, do this. I only want it in black, or I only want to do this, or but yeah, if he liked it, we'd bring copies of the guitars. He could play them and see them and feel them and touch them, and that was part of the process.
That was the funnest part of the job, right there.
It was.
Yep.
Because he had guitar knowledge, so you could talk to him about everything, so that was the cool part about that,
Totally. Well, hey, if we're going to make faded guitars, let's make some faded basses, right?
Yeah. That's back when we went and redid those pickups and made them just simple. They just look like that.
Yeah.
You just put a normal humbucker pickup in it.
Well, what's funny is, then we did the 3 pickup with the chicken head knob, right? With the 6-way selector switch.
Yeah. So we could get the first and the third pickups and all combinations.
Yep.
So yeah, the SG3 was that SG3.
SG3. Yep.
Yeah. So.
And then
that was the next inclination.
Yeah, so we did a faded Explorer. There's a cool story about this. Again, we were going faded crazy, and I think I'm sure we had some people asking about, hey, can you do an Explorer? We would get feedback from dealers and distributors every day, right? So at this point in time, this is probably 2006. We debuted this at the NAMM show. Map on this was, so street price was $949. It was basically a worn version of an Explorer, right?
Right.
And then I found a presentation that I did, probably put this together mid 2007 or late 2007. These are the prototypes in the picture. They weren't even in production yet. So, I'd grab the prototypes and hang them up or rest them against something so there were no hanger marks. But that's totally I don't know. Maybe I had a
Photoshop.
lamp. Yeah.
Sit around and Microsoft Paint and
Yeah.
click all the
Yeah.
black around the outside. Yeah.
So the funny thing was that I do remember making them in a limited edition. So here, between the new product proposal that we just saw and this presentation for our sales force for the NAMM show, we limited it to 800 of each. So it was a limited edition. Back then, we were killing it with limited editions too, or we were calling them hit and runs. It was great. I mean, they were coming fast and furious, and a little later you'll see we'll get into the whole Guitar of the Week program and Guitar of the Month. I mean just tons and tons of limited editions. Now, at this point, I didn't have the SKU ready yet, so that probably means I didn't get the sign off on the sheet just yet, so I
Yeah. The
wasn't going
sheet
to
wasn't
reveal
signed. Right.
that. Which means we didn't have the dealer cost on that yet either. But
Right.
I remember being at the NAMM show. We were upstairs in our room and we were showing all sorts of guitars, and these two were there. And the Guitar Center people came over and they said, "We want them all." And I
Just
don't
be all.
remember if we sold them all to Guitar Center or not. I just don't remember, but they would do stuff like that all the time.
Sure. An exclusive for GC. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They're probably still getting them, I mean, the traditional pros and all that they've done over the years.
Yeah.
GC everybody always wanted their little niche because that got around the pricing, Oh, well, you can't get this guitar everywhere else,
Right. And there was no competition.
Right. This is a model that Gibson makes for only us. So,
And we were good at it. We could turn on a dime and crank out 400 units of something really fast.
yeah, we had a good team.
Epiphone, you have overseas production, time on the water, inspection when it comes in. That's months, right? And Custom Shop was so full of orders, like they were struggling to keep up, with what the demand was already. So for limited editions for us to shove 400 more units into the line at that point really wasn't a big deal, right?
Well, across the globe, you think about 400 guitars.
Yeah, it was.
If we sold, 2 in every state, we'd have 100 gone already.
Yeah. Yeah.
So and of course back then, the Japanese market was huge. Yamaha bought, I don't know, 30% of production or something at one point. So
God,
they were buying a lot of guitars. Yeah. So.
Yep.
It's hard to imagine where all those guitars went. Every day we churns out 300 or 400 guitars at least.
We're still doing it.
Yeah.
But that's amazing how one idea out of the paint department turned into all of that, right? I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it didn't really require a lot of training, a lot of differences, We could snap right into that quick, and it dried fast, and it looked good, and it really checked a lot of boxes at that point, So,
what the other cool thing about our culture was too? Like, we all knew a good idea can come from anywhere.
Yeah, and we were, we had a good team, and there wasn't a lot of egos there at that time. So when Chris Roberts came up and said, "Hey, I got this idea for a finish," well, everybody listened.
Yeah, no one got butt hurt.
We tried to make it work. And hey, man, I think we could do that. And everybody would pitch in, and it really, that's how we were able to turn. I mean, that's a huge ship. Imagine, turning a big factory full of 400 people around and just changing direction. Oh, we got these new models. Okay, we're going to raise production. Go, So, and we pulled it off. We had good trainers. We had good quality people. We had good employees that wanted to learn and wanted to do it and cared about it. And most of them are still there now. I see people are still there at the plant that I worked with back in the 90s,
Yeah. We still got a ton of friends there.
Yeah. So, that's really what saves Gibson, is the people that's there and their passion and their love for what they do. And, that's what's kept it relevant, I think.
Yeah,
all these years.
totally. And that's some of the reason why we're here. You know, we're part of that, and so many other people are part of the story, and we don't get to be part of the story, but we're, you know, our hearts were in it big time.
Well, look at us. We can't stop talking about it.
I know. We can't shut up. All right, so
and that
anyway.
means episode 6 coming next week. What the hell are these guys talking about?
I know. But anyway, so hey, that's the background behind the Headstock story of how the SG Faded saved Gibson. It literally did. So hey, listen, if you like what you're hearing, if you like what's going on behind the Headstock, Frank and I have an email address. It's behindtheheadstock@gmail.com. Feel free to reach out to us, send us any questions or episode ideas, or, you know, if you want to say hey. Leave your comments down below in the videos. But please like and subscribe. We want to keep doing this, and the more you like and subscribe, the more we can keep this going. So we're having a blast. So we appreciate you guys joining us again, and we'll see you next time.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Take it easy.
Go behind the Headstock with Kevin and Frank, 2X Gibson employees talking about guitars and the guitar industry with an inside perspective.